Welcome to our FanDuel Kentucky Derby week stream as we get set for Derby 150. It is Tuesday, April 30th. Scott Hazelton with you. Very happy to be joined by Andy Biancone and Geena Lucille as we get set for this week. As we bring in Andy first, we're maybe 100 yards away from each other. Andy, you're on the first turn. I am in the FanDuel TV production trailer right now, utilizing Wi-Fi. And Geena Lucille, it looks like you're in the media center here at Churchill Downs.
That would be correct. You're in the parlay.
Well, it is Tuesday, and typically, Andy, we don't look to Tuesday as a day for Kentucky Derby works, but that was the case this morning because we had a couple of Japanese horses working this morning that are in the Kentucky Derby. Before we get to that, we do want to remind you of our $20 no sweat win bet that you can take advantage of this weekend when it comes to Derby 150. So make sure you opt in the FanDuel Racing app. No sweat Derby bet up to $20 back. FanDuel, a proud partner of the Kentucky Derby. So big opportunities this week. Make sure you're checking in on all of your promos for this week's races because there is going to be a slew of them. And let's take a look at the Derby field before we take a look at those workouts from this morning. This was drawn on Saturday evening during the races. The first 11 look like this. Sierra Leone, the second choice, 3-1. Draws post position number 2. Teal Password, who will see his workout in just a moment. He's 30-1, drawing post 10. And then you go to the outside. That's where you'll find Fierceness, the number 17 runner, the 5-2 morning line favorite. But let's get to these workouts this morning. And it happened during the 7:30 window in which they reserved for the Oaks and Derby runners to train, starting with T.O. Password. He worked in company, Andy, with a stablemate who's actually running in the Alashiba, T.O. Saint Denis. And I'd say of the two of these, am I crazy for liking this work the best?
Absolutely not. He showed a lot of speed, more than I expected him to, and he just got over the track with ease, galloped out really well. I was quite impressed with this work.
He tracks off the pace. You can see the rider aboard, Geena. He's got a handful of horse, and he's keeping him reined in at this point in time. But when he turns him loose, he put in a snappy time as well. Was it 46 and change?
Oh, I think that's correct when I looked at the board when I went back to the media center. But yeah, this horse is just very well put together. And out of the two, I feel that this horse just has a little bit more oomph, and he's put together a little bit better, I would say, than Forever Young.
And the odd thing about this is that I think he's still going to end up being, I shouldn't say odd thing about this, he's still probably going to end up being a massive price. I know one workout doesn't tell the whole story. The whole story for T.O. Password is he broke his maiden in January, and then he barely won these stakes race that qualified him here for the Kentucky Derby a few months after at the end of March. I mean, might we just be seeing a horse blossoming at the right time? Is this too soon, Andy, for this colt?
I don't think so. I mean, his record kind of speaks for himself. A lot of these horses in here are quite lightly raced. I was pretty happy with his work this morning. Something to consider, though, the track was lightly harrowed after the break with the light float, the small float. So it was sealed and sloppy up until the break, and they sealed it but dragged the shallow harrow behind. So just something to consider. The track was kind of muddy. I find it interesting, the training style with T.O. Password, though. They often have him following other horses, tucked up, covered up all the time. So that just kind of seems like his routine. So it was kind of nice to see him get in front of his workmate there and really stride out. But he looked good.
At the time they gave him half mile in 46 and 4. I mean, that is a snappy time for any horse, especially the week of the Derby on a Tuesday before the Derby. So I think for a lot of folks that were out here this morning and perhaps folks at home, T.O. Password may come onto the radar for a horse that probably was far off the radar, Geena, looking at just his two starts and coming over from Japan.
So also, I want to make note that if you check the forecast, it does look like we're going to have similar weather on Derby Day as we did today. And if this horse is skipping over the ground like this, he might just, no one's really looking at him. I don't mind the fast paced work because sometimes you can throw some wind in their belly and they do it so easily and effortlessly that they go back to the barn and they're fine. They're ready to go and they could do it again.
Want to remind our viewers here on the FanDuel stream, get involved in the conversation. Any questions you have for anything that comes to mind, throw it at us. We'll hit you up via the stream, and you can get involved on YouTube as well as Facebook as we look forward to fielding some of those questions a little bit later on today. When it comes to Forever Young, on the flip side, Andy, 103, that was the 5/8 workout that Forever Young put forth this morning, right around the same time, just maybe 30 seconds after Tio Password put in his work. And to be fair, this is a workout solo. He does not have company like Tio Password had in his morning work.
Yes, and that makes a big difference. I think these two connections were kind of looking for very separate things regarding their works, but Forever Young, everything he does throughout the week, you just see him moseying around the backside. He seems like a really good-natured, even-tempered horse. This work was, I think, just maintenance, get some air in his lungs. The good thing, the slight advantage that Forever Young does have over Tio Password, I think, is that he's one left-handed. Tio Password has never raced going left-handed, and I think that's something that the wagering public certainly needs to be aware of. Forever Young has had no issues. He's won 2 races right-handed, and then the 3 races leading up to this left-handed. So that kind of shows a lot of versatility in itself, and that he's a very intelligent individual.
His 2 published workouts coming into the Derby are going to be 119-3 and 103. I mean, that may go down in history as the 2 slowest time workouts if he's able to pull off this upset coming into the Kentucky Derby. I don't know that I've ever seen a published workout, Andy, in 119-3. I didn't think you could get a published time of 119-3.
Yeah, that's pretty tepid. But it seems like with him, everything that the connections have been putting an emphasis on with this horse are just long things. I mean, sometimes he gallops 2 laps. Like he goes on a walk, he gallops 1 lap, 2 laps slow, and he does everything easily on the bridle. They're never scrubbing on him. They're never pushing him. I guess they know how fast he can go, and they're just kind of happy to build up his stamina and build up his lungs with these easier long-distance works.
Well, Yoshida Yahagi's got him undefeated. He's 5 for 5 in his career. He's made over $2 million, won the UAE Derby, won the Saudi Derby as well, and here he is in the Kentucky Derby. He's 10-1 on the morning line, the son of Real Steel. We've got some questions coming in. Obi Banksy, we're going to talk about Sierra Leone in just a moment. Mitchell is asking, wet track Friday, 4% chance on Saturday. Japan horses always work differently. That's true, Mitchell. We've seen it. I mean, there was times at Breeders' Cups where it seemed like, I think it was Jasper Crone, Andy, who was out there for like 45 minutes, literally just taking lap after lap after lap.
It's very different seeing American horses versus international horses. It's international people from Japan overseas tend to take their time. Horses are together or taking long periods of time between their gallop, break. I mean, the closest thing you see to that here in America is Bill Mott when he gallops a lap before they work. They gallop and they stand and then they go breathe. So, I mean, there's no right or wrong way to train a horse. It's just fascinating to see all the different ways, and especially leading up to Derby.
Each horse is an individual. We know that they have their ways of doing things, and that's how they've gotten to this point. So why change it? Let's take a look at some of the gallops from this morning, and Just a Touch, the number 8 horse, is where we will begin the gallop conversation. This is a colt by Justify, who was very much into the bridle on a long rein, if memory serves correctly, from watching him go around there. I mean, this is a good look for this colt, in my opinion, the way he's getting over this track, Andy.
The more I see him, the more I like him. He's very effective in the way he moves. He's very focused. He's forward. He's on the bit. He's always kind of wants to do a little more, but I kind of like that attitude, and especially going to the Derby where having a little bit of speed is so helpful.
It is, Geena. I mean, that's the one thing. He holds position, right? I mean, he maybe chased a faster pace. It's closer to a faster pace than what they wanted to be in the Toyota Bluegrass, and that's what got him caught in the end. But any step forward, this horse is a serious contender at 10-1.
And I love what Andy said. Like, the more we get to see Just a Touch, it's like he's gaming and gaming and gaming and gaming. He's just gaining so much. And to be drawn on the outside of Honor Marie, and then you have Encino right there, he's got a perfect spot, like a nice little garden trip, if you will, if everybody breaks the way that we kind of anticipate them breaking. And he can just set into a nice position. He's going to be a horse that he might be right there. He
Yeah,
looks
I
good.
think he will.
God,
I think he
looks
will
good.
be. I'm really
So
interested to
confident.
see how the wagering goes on Just a Touch, because I just have a feeling that there's no way that you're getting 10-1 on Just a Touch on Saturday. There's just no way, right? I mean, it's a
No.
dream
No
world to think that you're going to get 10-1. Let's go ahead and take a look at Honor Marie. Honor Marie is a horse that was very good last year at the age of 2. Risen Star, not so good, and then second in the Louisiana Derby. What do you think of this head carriage, Andy?
It's typical for him. I don't like it, but that's the horse. He's always done that. One thing I do have to say, because I was kind of watching some of his works over at the fairgrounds, and he does like Churchill Downs better. He just gets over this surface a little better. I don't think he was working as well over at the fairgrounds. So I think the head carriage, although it's not the most preferable thing, it's him. So as long as he's maintaining his own and staying true to himself, that's the main thing.
Geena, this is a horse like so many in this race that are going to be trying to close from way out of it. Are you convinced Honor Marie is capable of doing so?
I really believe so. And when he did throw in that little bit of a flat race, we really, there was some excuses there for him being off of a training schedule and coming back. And something about Honor Marie is, I'm not going to say he's like this horse, but Wise Dan used to go like that. Very uncomfortable looking, head cocked up, pulling on you. And Honor Marie is a bit of a touchy horse in the mouth. And so his rider does a phenomenal job. But right now it's just trying to keep the dragon down. We're just trying to keep him nice and calm. And that's kind of what you see is him going like, oh, I want to go. And he's getting mad, he's kind of like he's wanting to go. And this horse moves a lot better going faster. He's a lot more comfortable with speed. So that's just kind of what you're seeing in the morning with Honor Marie. And Andy, you've been on these horses that act like that. And your hands are like buried in their withers and you put your fingertips under the saddle and you just let them kind of, do their own thing and not make them mad.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. He's happier when he's going faster.
Let's go to Sierra Leone next. Next conversation as far as way horses looked on the track this morning. Watching him early in his gallop versus late in his gallop, he just seemed like a completely different horse if you watch the entire time that he was spent out there on the course. And I'll try to fill for you, Andy, until the end of the national anthem, which I do believe is getting set to wrap just about now, so you can unmute your video. But like I said, Andy, I don't know if you got a chance to see him throughout this gallop, but as this gallop went on, he just got more and more and more into it and looked better and better and better.
Yeah, and that's also a good sign of a horse who's going to handle this mile and a quarter distance. Like, you want to see a horse who's going to get stronger as the gallop progresses. And a lot of these horses don't want to pull up in the morning because they just get happier the more they get going. So I think that's a positive sign.
I'm with Ashley, who checks in on YouTube. I don't think that he's hit top gear yet, Geena. But can he do it against 19 others? Is he going to be able to find that open room? Is he quick enough to hit those holes? I think that's something you're going to hear from Chad Brown if you tune in later on FanDuel TV. I wonder if this is the time in which it's going to come together for Sierra Leone, and not that it hasn't come together because he's already won big races to this point in time.
Yes, this horse is freaky good. Kind of like just Andy and I both picked him in Lexington at Keeneland when we saw him run last. It was just he just the essence and the way that he carries himself. He's a real true racehorse. And when I spoke with Tyler, I asked him. I said, "Have you felt all of his gears yet?" And he said, "Not even close." He's like, "We haven't even. He has untapped potential." And to say that with everything that he's already done, it says a lot about this horse. And Chad and Tyler know what they have. Tyler sat on multiple horses that are just so phenomenal. And for him to say that is just kind of goes to show you what he feels in his hands.
Well, Tyler Gaffalione had options. He stays with Sierra Leone. That opens up a mount for domestic product, and Chad Brown having the luxury of getting Irad Ortiz Jr. into this situation with a colt that was a winner of the Tampa Bay Derby. I spoke to Chad this morning. He said this horse benefited from this 60-day window of time and about that from the Tampa Derby to this race on Saturday. And I think that, he won the Tampa Derby, and I think that he ran the best race, in my opinion, Andy, in the Holy Bull. Of all of those horses, I think his Holy Bull second was the best effort of any of those horses that afternoon, with all the attention on fierceness and with Hades able to pull off the upset, walking the dog on the front end.
Absolutely. I think domestic products form kind of got dirtied up because of the slow times, but in my opinion, I feel like the fact that he was able to close so effectively on such a speed bias track with a slow pace ahead of him was even more of a testament to the quality of the horse, and physically is outstanding. He's got a lot of length. He's going to get better with distance. He's got that speed about him, and attitude-wise, very good. I remember in the Holy Bull, Tyler was walking up to the gate. There was all kinds of bananas going on in the crowd, band, huge crowd, and Tyler was walking this horse to the gate on the buckle of his reins. There was slack in the reins, and domestic product was just unbothered by everything. So genuinely, as a 30-1 morning line, which I don't think we're going to get, this horse is a great long shot and should be taken seriously. I also had the opportunity to speak with Chad the other morning. We saw Sierra Leone in his final breeze. His exercise rider, Chris Bond, was aboard him, and Tyler was on domestic product. And I wanted to know why Chad did that. Obviously Tyler is riding Sierra Leone in the Derby. And he just said Irad was out of town. Tyler knows the horse really well. He's ridden him twice. And he said that because he's going to be riding the inside horse, he kind of wanted him to protect him, like have the inside horse's best interest in mind, being that was his mount. And so that was the idea behind putting Tyler on domestic products for the work.
Let's move along to our next bit of business here this morning on the FanDuel stream for Derby 150. We've got some activity when it comes to the chat room, so keep them coming in. Let's talk about Resilience. Resilience comes out of the Wood Memorial, and his last two races, he's gotten better as of late. According to the speed figures, he ran the same race he did in the Risen Star, and that same race that was a fourth in the Risen Star was good enough to win the Wood Memorial by 2 1/4 lengths. What's your input here when it comes to Resilience for Bill Mott, Geena?
That's an interesting statistic to say, because it just goes to show you what different fields that they're running in. And this horse actually really caught my eye this morning. I texted the group chat that I was like, man, Resilience is just holding a lot of really good, like Andy says, he's shiny, he's holding a lot of good weight, he's not stressed out at all. And another horse that, again, I'm going to say confident, very confident going to the track. I like the way that this horse moves and has a lot of impulsion as well. And he kicks out of the turn nice. And I don't know if you can see that in the gallop, but as he comes out of the turn, he's so well balanced. And balance is something that is so crucial, especially in these really big fields. You want a horse that's balanced and handy. So he's a horse that's really growing into himself and looks to be quite handy. And this is a 20-horse field, guys. I mean, we can, like we said in the group chat, we can talk about this all day, and it does a little bit of luck. You got to have some luck to win the Derby.
You do. There's so many variables. I mean, it would be impossible to try to, how folks try to predict the bracket for the NCAA tournament correctly. Yeah. Try to predict the pace and the trips that these horses are going to have. I mean, there's just so many things that you cannot predict, and that's part of the brilliance of it. Some will be right, some will be wrong, and we'll tell stories about it, whether we're on the right side of history or on the wrong side of history when betting this race in the FanDuel Racing app. West Saratoga. Let's talk about West Saratoga, a horse that I don't think probably a lot of people would be discussing when it comes to Derby 150, the number 13 runner, 50-1 on the morning line, second in the Jeff Ruby Stakes. His last win was in the Iroquois here at Churchill Downs. Has he progressed enough, Andy, in your opinion, to take him seriously? Could he be a Rich Strike type?
I don't think so. I think he's going to have to really pull something out of the bag. I mean, love the story. I liked his work the other day, but I think this horse was kind of just an example of a precocious individual, because back in the Iroquois, he did kind of match the rest of the horses, but at this point in the year, physically, you can't really compare him to some of the others.
Yeah, it's one of a few in here that I think, and I think the next horse that we move on to that would be shocks. I mean, and we've been shocked before in this race, but West Saratoga, based on what he's done at the age of 3, he's gotten a little better, but he's not risen to the likes of what we have needed to see from him in order to be considered as a serious contender in the run for the Roses. Grand Mo the first, the number 16 horses, where we'll go to next. Last in, right? He was the last in. You reported this, Andy, when we were over at Keeneland, and his first 2 races were wins sprinting, but he's yet to win going long. And he ended up beating 16 lengths in the Grade 1 Florida Derby. Another one, just simply looking at his form, that it's really, really difficult to take him as a serious, even top 4 contender at the very least.
Yeah, Grand Mo the first, definitely. I've seen him in person as well. Good looking horse, but kind of same kind of vibe as West Saratoga. Doesn't really match up physically to the rest of the field. I actually think, I know we ran some sprints at Gulfstream. The way in which he won them, coming from off the pace, I think kind of indicates that he might want a little stretch out in distance, but this might be too far.
What do you make of him, Geena?
I actually kind of like this horse. I think running right behind Catalytic, and that was in the Florida Derby with Fierceness. I mean, Fierceness just blew everybody out of the water. So take him out, and then you have Catalytic and him, which I think Catalytic is another sneaky horse and really, really just bodied up and into himself. I think if there's going to be a crazy fast-paced speed, and I was talking to Jesus Caton this morning. We had an interview who's riding West Saratoga. He said the speed in this race he believes is going to be just crazy fast, and they're going to sit back and just kind of wait. These 2 horses, these are horses that, and I think he's going to like. I think this horse is going to like the distance. I think this horse suits the distance. The owners are they love their horse. They're very high on him. But this is he's the son of Uncle Mo. These guys, giant causeways, they love to go long. They can go long for days. So he looks good. And I saw him at the track this morning, like Andy did. And the trainer is like, he's doing everything right. So I think the speed in the front of the race might set him up for could set him up for success with the Derby. So
Let's move backwards in time as far as the way that these races will be run, and let's turn our attention to the marquee race on Friday, the Kentucky Oaks Grade 1 event. It's race number 11 here at Churchill Downs, and here's a look at the morning line. As you see the first half of the field, Tarifa is the morning line favorite, drawn post position number 8 for Brad Cox, coming in off of 3 consecutive wins down at Fairgrounds, winning the Grade 2 Rachel Alexandra and the Grade 2 Fairgrounds Oaks. And then we move to the outside portion of this field, and you'll see Just FYI, who is 9-2 on the morning line and hasn't had the smoothest journey to get to this point. They had to skip a race earlier in the year. Her comeback race was in the Grade 1 Central Bank Ashland, Andy, and that, according to any metric you look at, any speed figure you look at, was the best race that she's ever run. So if she needed that race and can build off of it, Just FYI is way better than 9-2 is telling you.
100%, Scott. I mean, she was supposed to run in Florida, had a fever, had to scratch, and she got into the Grade 1 Central Bank Ashland really at 70%. And I can see a physical difference between her now versus the Central Bank Ashland. She looks a lot better. She's filled in. Saw Junior Alvarado work her the other day, and he was having issues pulling her up. Not issues, but she was just very keen to gallop out. And she really looks like she's coming into form. With that being said, Tarifa should be respected. The fairgrounds path year after year kind of dominates for these Oaks fillies. We saw Pretty Mischievous last year come out of the Fairgrounds Oaks, and Tarifa won that pretty easily, and is another filly who has really stood out to me on the track. Just a great mover. I know her work under Flavien Prat was a little bit aggressive, but in the mornings she gallops beautifully. Such a fluid mover and a really smart-minded filly.
What do you think about Just FYI taking this step now, second time out this year, Geena, off of that hiccup at the beginning of the year, having the fever and having to skip a race and then get fit and ready for the biggest test of her career off of one race?
I mean, we just watched her on the screen galloping so impressively. Like, she's so strong. She's such a powerful filly. And I think she looks great. I mean, she's literally coming into this race looking the best we have seen. Not we've seen her, but she's just the best. And she was standing at the gate today, and she was like on her toes, and the pony was keeping her quiet, and the rider was just keeping her contained. And she wants those lilies, man. She wants those lilies.
She's going to have to earn them, because this is a deep field, especially when you consider a horse like the 12-horse Power Squeeze. And the Power Squeeze is 12-1 on the morning line, and that seems about fair for this filly, giving the Just FYIs and the Ways and Means and the Tarifas of the world, and even Torpedo Anna, who we saw down at Oaklawn Park, put on a brilliant show that afternoon for Kenny McPeak. But Power Squeeze, 12-1 morning line. She's won her last 3, and she's a daughter of Union Rags. And that pedigree's only should get better moving to longer distances, as she will on Friday.
Absolutely. Power Squeeze obviously hasn't done anything wrong. She's bred to handle the distance, but for some reason I just have kind of a bias against the Florida fillies. Like, all of them to me kind of look, there's a huge separation physically between the Florida fillies and others besides Wade's and Means. But Power Squeeze, Fiona's Magic, they all just kind of look a bit dwarfed in comparison to Tarifa or Just FYI. They kind of, that's just my opinion.
I think that's a fair assessment. I do think that's a fair assessment, especially from someone like Andy, who's spent the entire winter down at Gulfstream Park. Geena, your thoughts on Power Squeeze, the Union Rex filly who draws post 12?
One thing I like about Power Squeeze, though, is you can't count out those little chestnuts, right? I mean, you can see the yoke is like the rider's holding it, so it's like pushed up against her leg there, and they're tough. They're tough fillies. And if you saw the Florida Oaks, she was able to duel and kind of battle it out with those horses. So there's a grit to Power Squeeze that I really appreciate.
Before we go, what do you both expect to see in these next few days as we get towards Friday and Saturday? We want to see these horses go out to the track, not miss any training. Obviously, that typically ends up being a red flag. Is that where we're at now in the week with Wednesday up next as far as the stream is concerned? We got live racing today, but looking at the Oaks and the Derby runners.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, bubble wrap them to the race. Obviously, trainers under a microscope at this point. A lot of scrutiny from state vets, etc., which is how it should be. This is a very regulated thing, but anything can happen, and really just getting them to the track, happy, come back home safe, sound, no dropped riders, anything like that. All the work is pretty much done.
Ashley
If you
Gordon's
don't have them
expecting,
ready by this point.
It's right. The window.
They ain't gonna
it's
be
too
ready.
late. Exactly. It's now or never. The now's not here, but now as far as being ready, it's not a moving target. These races are happening whether you are ready or not. We've got to wrap things up. Before we do, we got live racing coming up, by the way, on FanDuel TV here from Churchill Downs. Thank you so much for everybody joining us here on the stream and for your comments and questions. Don't forget about the No Sweat Derby bet, $20 back, up to $20 back. Make sure you check it out through FanDuel for Kentucky Derby 150. We'll be back again tomorrow. Join the conversation on YouTube as well as Facebook. For Geena, for Andy, I'm Scott. Hold your smile for 20 seconds. That's what I've been told. Smile for 20 seconds as we say goodbye on our stream here on this Tuesday leading up to the first Saturday.